A new era, the first in the world, a technological leap, a new quality, revolution. This is what's being said about technology today. But there will be no revolution. I'm sorry, you've been deceived.
Disappointed!
Hi, my name is Szymon Adamus and these are the amazing games. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X consoles are coming to stores this year, probably during the Christmas season, so that all players in the world have a problem with what to choose. Thanks Sony, thanks Microsoft. A new generation of consoles has been talked about for a long time. The closer we get to the actual release, the more the messages about them intensify. PlayStation 5 will no longer be just another console in the series. According to Andrea Pesino, Ready at Dawn CEO, it will be one of the most revolutionary and inspired home console ever designed. Its SSD will completely change the way next generation games are being made. And the design of the new console is, wait for it, revolutionary. Of course, Xbox Series X will not be any worse. The new Xbox will no longer be just another console in the series. Microsoft has redefined the console format, creating a completely different than before revolutionary design that not only looks great but also provides excellent hardware performance. What's more, Microsoft has built a new, unique SSD that will change gaming on Xbox forever and is, wait for it, revolutionary. Everything in this new generation of console is so revolutionary that it's strange that no one has yet grabbed the flags, gone on the streets and started singing.
Thank you for this.
Don't get me wrong, it's great that the new consoles will be faster, better cooled, quieter, more efficient and easier to program. Probably, because we don't know that at the moment. But that's not important. I am truly glad that the new generation is coming and will be better. I like good-looking games. It's great that developers will get more power to use and players will get faster and nicer-looking games. But there will be no revolution. I'm very sorry, but no. Sure, SSD will improve gaming comfort and the consoles may be a little quieter because they will have a big chassis and better cooling. Network services will improve a little bit because they always do. And gamepads will be a little more comfortable because they are always getting a little bit more comfortable. And that's it. I know that for many of you this is obvious, but marketing slogans today are not made to say what hardware will be, but what vision, dream stands behind it. And what is more beautiful than the dream of revolution? A sudden change in the way we consume content or use equipment. Of course, manufacturers are driving it themselves using a simple tactic of a communication through sensation. Nowadays, everyone must be the first and the best in the world. And of course, revolutionary. Reading about new hardware, not only from Sony or Microsoft, one can come to the conclusion that every next generation will change the world. While visiting the websites of cell phone manufacturers, we learned that the iPhone 11 has basically everything. The Samsung Galaxy Note 20 takes communication to a new level, and the Huawei P40 Pro, thanks to cooperation with Leica, is a device for visionary photography. Wow, you've set the bar very high. How will you manage to jump over it next year? Oh, I know, there will be another revolution.
Good news, everyone!
The news like these are everyday life today, from giant brands to smaller companies, from the edge of the technological universe. Unfortunately, they are trending because although they often sound absurd, there is always someone who will write about it in a similar tone. The producers are exaggerating all the time, but it's understandable. They are driven by sales results. What's worse is that journalists can often be drawn into a similar narrative, and it is also strengthened by pseudo-journalists. The work of actual journalists is hindered by systemic changes, accelerating the press cycle and trying to monetize it at all costs. Large web portals, blogs, as well as YouTube channels or Instagram profiles use clickbait because it works. Traffic is money. The more sensational information is, the more spotlight it gets. That's why you sometimes get the impression that the world ends every day and that every technological innovation is a revolution. Even if journalists are reliable and experience the social culture of the media and constant need to inform about everything makes them overwhelmed with nonsensical additional tasks that distract them from actual journalistic work. Martin Baron, editor of the Washington Post and earlier the Boston Globe, portrayed by Liv Schreiber in the movie Spotlight, says,
"Journalists can't work 24 hours a day, every day of the week, and do everything that they're being asked to do these days. So they have to do their traditional reporting, they have to participate in social media, they have to produce a wire service that's available 24 hours a day, they have to be responsible for video, you name it, they're involved in it. It's a lot to ask. I don't have a problem with asking a lot of the journalists, but we have to recognize that there's a limit to what any human being can do, or certainly do well."
And of course there are people who consider themselves journalists but are simply amateurs, who have gained more or less reach and often don't even realize how much they don't know about what journalistic work should be like. Of course, there is nothing wrong with sharing your opinion on social media, but sometimes you have to realize your limitations and lack of experience, knowledge, or even basic education. When asked about his opinion on blogs and civil journalism, Christopher Hitchens said,
"I became a journalist because I didn't want to have to rely on the press for information." And I'm very sorry for people who do think that that's what they're getting when they buy the New York Times in the morning. I only read it to make sure that what everyone else thinks is going on, because it's useful to know what people think is the news. And none of my sources are from the press, and I don't watch the television at all.
The difference between Christopher Hitchens and all the other Kens and Karens you meet on the internet is that Hitchens devoted most of his life to improving his journalistic skills, wrote dozens of books, essays, worked for several editors, lectured, participated in debates and panel discussions, and expanded his skills and knowledge until his death. Ken and Karen simply turn on Wikipedia. So it's very possible, almost certain, that when you read about the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, you'll probably get some ultra sensational news about how revolutionary these devices will be. The truth is, however, that the real technological revolution happens very rarely. It is almost never predictable, and the people who write about it in such a way before the fact simply do poor journalistic work. In short, there will be no revolution. Why? Let's ask our tech expert Paweł Kuzio.
In modern and recent times there were several revolutions: financial and agricultural revolution, two industrial revolutions, scientific and technical revolution, and digital revolution. If you were to list the most important inventions in the history of mankind, the list would have to include a wheel, a compass, a steam and internal combustion engine, a moving font and printing machine, vaccines, an electric battery, a telegraph, a fridge, a light bulb, a plane, a transistor, an atomic fission, and so on. Of course, the list can be extended to include inventions related to the intellectual part of our lives. Now think about the last 30 years. What has changed the world so radically that it can be called a revolution with clear conscience? Certainly the internet and mobile phones, GPS, cloning, map of human genome, and when it comes to specific products, is definitely iPhone, YouTube, Netflix, Google and Facebook. How many of these revolutions were predicted? Of course, if researchers from some of the richest countries in the world join forces to decode the map of the human genome in the Human Genome Project, it's very likely that something wonderful will come out of it. But most other revolutions have taken us by surprise. Facebook was created by a coincidence. Google at the very beginning was created by 3 Stanford University students, and Netflix was such a long shot that years later there was even a book written about it. In the book, Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, describes a difficult and not at all obvious way to change how we consume films and TV shows today. The story of Netflix starts back in 1997. Yes, over 20 years ago. No, of course, at the time no one had an internet connection fast enough to play films on demand on their computers. Netflix in its initial form was a mail-order DVD rental company. It was only a decade later that the possibility of watching films online was introduced. In the United States, the physical media rental service is still available, and in the first 2 quarters of this year it generated over $120 million in revenue. With the development of technology, the form in which TV shows are presented has changed, but the idea has remained the same: subscription-based and convenient access to your favorite content. Just like the expansion of distribution methods, the area of Netflix operation grew gradually. Just look at it. The company entered my home country, Poland, in 2016, that is 19 years after its launch, and today Netflix is practically synonymous with modern television. Speaking of such giants, it's impossible not to mention Apple and their iPhone. In 2007, if someone already knew the concept of a smartphone, they thought of some Windows or Symbian monster with a keyboard, until the iPhone appeared.
An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. And here it is.
Developing the first phone with bit-and Apple logo cost $150 million and about 5 years of work. Today, we undoubtedly consider it revolutionary. A phone that could make calls, send text messages, play music, and browse the web.
Well, what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen.
But as with Netflix, the revolution did not come suddenly. Each subsequent generation of the iPhone and each subsequent version of iOS made small changes to get to where they are today. In other words, the first iPhone wouldn't have been revolutionary if it hadn't been for every next iPhone and every other phone of the competition going in the same direction.
So no, there will be no revolution. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X will not change dramatically the way you play your favorite games. They will be faster, maybe a little bit quieter, and certainly more awesome in many ways, but not revolutionary. And there's nothing wrong with that.
We hope you've enjoyed the first glimpse of our future today.
If you fell for the media marketing hype, don't beat yourself about it too much. These are the times when everything has to be the first, the biggest, and most importantly, revolutionary. Just next time, take a calmer approach and don't let yourself be manipulated by marketers or inexperienced journalists. In the meantime, let me know in the comments which console you are waiting for and why. Take care, you wonderful people. Bye.